makes me think about Jiggies, which makes me think about jigsaw puzzles, and I'm like, that would be a good Halloween costume for Ziggy if he was playing there that day.
I guess so.
I wouldn't mind that.
Does the production overlay have like a custom field? Because it says Gerald on the overlay on the PPM.
Oh, for sure.
Dang,
Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Every time they try to get a Korean player to come in and play in any of these things, and they just only have 70 barcode accounts and none of them with a real name, the production has to be ready to just slap whatever needs to be there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Don't you have a tournament account? No. They're all barcodes.
Yeah, they are. He uses Gerald, so it's gonna be fun when you like. I don't know if you call him Gerald, right? But if you call him Gerald and I call him Gerald, and then we're talking about Jagannatha versus Jagannatha, and then how do you pronounce it?
Jagannatha. I think the only way to lose in that scenario, Zombie Grub, is to let it get to you. But I think as long as we both accept that we might just pronounce something differently, it doesn't really matter. You know? I'm gonna go for diplomatic victory on this one.
Yeah. I just like pointing it out so that the maximum number of Twitch viewers really tells.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is if someone doesn't like the way I say something, there is literally nothing I'm gonna do that's gonna make them change their minds. So it's okay. You know, That's just the way it is. You can't land all of them. Not all of them are gonna land.
Yeah. So Twilight Council, but then Ziggy doing something I think a little bit more interesting. Got two barracks of the factory going on here. It's not that it's a totally unique build, and it's one that he's shown preference to in the past, but it is just like, yeah, I mean, most people are going for the 1-1-1, right? Maybe like a Howling opener, modification on the factory, or just a Widowmine opener is still very much used. But going into the quote unquote 2-1-1 setup that a TDP build would look like with a 2-1-1. I know, can be a bit of a surprise if you're not expecting it. I feel like Gerald might know what to expect from Ziggy. They probably play against each other on ladder, and I'm sure he watched yesterday's games as well in preparation.
Yeah, so they
still inadvertently did economic damage by having Gerald respond to it. And, well, we'll see how the rest of the game goes. Gerald has a Warp Prism that is threatening the main base. That seems like it's going to do some damage.
Oh, God, he's supply blocked, too. There's no unit.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate timing. I mean, just enough to scare Geralt away, but now Ziggy's like, yeah, I have to deal with this. Every time I want to move out, I got to make sure I'm dealing with the Warp Prism, too.
Yeah, and when we cue the SpongeBob line, rev up those turrets, or you're going to have zealots charging all over your main base. Or he could invest supply and just leave his army there and only play the game with 180 supply, too. But that's the challenge that you're put into in this position. It's one of the smartest things that a Protoss player can do. Like, if your Terran player wants to be aggressive and you can hold off that first attack and then have the Prism to threaten with, it's just, it's just way too risky for the Terran to just move out and assume you won't do anything with it, because 10 Zealots in your production, as the Marines are coming out one by one, they're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, yes, they will. Constant threatening there from Geralt with a Warp Prism, and even some Zealots on the low ground to hit the third base, because Ziggy did make a Viking. I think Geralt's like, I'm going to have to be a little more clever with how I do this, but he has multiple attack points to interrupt any Ziggy push. And not only that, Ziggy's composition, I don't know if it was actually that great. Geralt went right into Storm, which at one point was the thing to do, and then it went back to going into Colossus, because the Storm was too on the nose, perhaps, and now it's back to having Storm. Well, Ziggy has no EMPs. His push could be stopped short with a Storm. It's already, inadvertently taking damage. He's not back at home defending against all of these Zealots. Actually, a large force of Geralt over here maybe opens up an opportunity for Ziggy's forces, but then how does he deal with 4 Storms?
Yeah, that's a good question, Zombie Grub. And based on what I'm seeing in my screen in front of me as I vomit, not a lot. He doesn't have a lot to deal with those size Storms. The third base has been lifted off. We got Medivacs dying. There's Stalkers and Zealots, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else there. Those guys are doing the job themselves. And with Disruptors being built back home, while you already have Storm done, can't really get worse than that. GG. Gerald takes the game, and I feel like we kind of won. The blue Terran player, he is Ziggy.
In the bottom right, as the red Protoss for Exxon, he is Geralt.
All right. Well, a little bit of a probe scout around his own base before he sends anything across the map. Gerald definitely does not want to risk getting caught, grabbed, or otherwise squeezed to death at the beginning of this game by Ziggy, who is building his barracks in his main like a good boy does. But he's going to build his engineering bay in the opponent's natural. And I like that. It's a filthy maneuver, but I love it, Zombie Grub. And it's a good one.
This gas
Block that base. Be annoying.
Yeah, this is a really annoying thing, but I mean...
Why not? Why do you build the second one instead of just putting a little bit more build time into it? I guess worried about getting surrounded faster? Engineering bays have the highest, I guess... No, probably even higher than the command center. They have like the highest hit point.
For Ziggy, actually.
Yeah, I think for Ziggy, like at the very least, from a Terran perspective on this scenario, knowing that assimilator can see my command center building in the main base always sucks, because you know the Protoss player built their thing in the other spot. Now, he tried to tuck that third CC, and he did successfully. Gerald has not seen that third CC, but that's exactly the kind of thing you want to do here, because if you're the Protoss player watching this, if you're like, you see your assimilator, you're like, yeah, okay, I gas stole. He doesn't have tech because of that. I also see that the natural command center is there, which means that you know when it's going to finish. You also know that there's no gas being mined from the natural. So you feel even more comfortable about being greedy, because you don't have to worry about anything. The chances that there was a factory hidden outside your base in that scenario are like insanely low. Like that'd be one of the most risky moves you could possibly try to pull off as Ziggy. Like we won't see anybody do that except for a guy like Maru, honestly. But good poke back here. Stutter step in to get rid of the adepts with the pressure that are being brought, but even he is feeling that pressure as we see that supply depot get that little upgrade going. That little skin on it now. My favorite depot skin, the one that gives it double supply. Costs though. There's a cost, and it's not.
What's the word? How many risks Ziggy wants to take? Because I feel like he could stop down that third with a tank on the high grounds. You also got to be prepared for a decent number of Blink Stalkers to harass you.
Yeah, this is one of those things you just need to be really careful, because if they get into the south side of that main base and nothing's in range of that spot, obviously you're worried about stim and combat shield. Ziggy has a tank that covers that. But that third orbital, you could just chip away at it, right? Why not? Okay, see there's a tank. I don't know about immediately blinking up, because now the Marines can actually kill at least one stalker. But why not just sit down there, poke at the orbital? I would unsiege the observer, because you're begging for a scan from a Terran with 3 orbitals. Yeah, goodbye. If he had unsieged it earlier and just kind of pull it back once the stalkers blinked up, I would have liked that a bit more. So good reaction there by Ziggy. Doesn't really lose anything, and I think he actually gains some value by buying himself the freedom of getting rid of the observer, so he can't really be pressured there anymore. But it's not like Gerald's in a bad place. His third is fully saturated. He still can poke the natural with these stalkers. It's just, you can kind of tell, I guess, both of these players still feel a good bit of pressure here. We're not necessarily getting the top tier Korean level play, but this has absolutely been a fun series thus far.
I mean, they're trying to play it very smart. Ziggy might be taking more precautions than we would expect from a Terran, like a high ground command center, but ultimately, if it does mean he takes less damage, and that might still, go ahead and win him out the game. Third TC is finally going to lift over as he gets comfortable on his bio. Stim combat shield being done, +1 attack going to finish. I am, again, worried about any Ghost Academy timing. It feels like with his solid economic setup, he's had plenty of SCVs. He's going to saturate that third base really quickly. I feel like it definitely is called for to get a decently timed Ghost Academy, especially if you would slap down a scan and see that there are High Templar, but even without it, I usually would expect the Ghost Academy just at a certain point in this matchup.
Yeah. The Ghosts, I mean, especially ever since they added the upgrade for EMP, right? And then they also had the Ghost start with enough energy to do a little bit of action on both sides of the fence. That was always going to be one of those things that just kind of made the Ghost like a general bread and butter unit for Terran. But it's cost prohibitive enough that I guess you kind of have to feel comfortable to do it. But I'm with you on that. Almost everybody just kind of blindly gets them regardless of what the Protoss is doing these days. And I think that's for very good reason. Ghosts are just awesome to have. And also, if you get into a scenario where you don't have them and your opponent has Templar, you usually just die. So this will still be hard to attack into a Terran player with Templar, but I think back to like just some of those gnarly storms that we actually saw on Gigantha, right? Like just Some crazy action, shredding the bio to pieces.
And Gerald's going to be
there's the Ghost
looking.
Academy.
Yeah, but it's not going to be here for what is. I don't think it's going to be like necessarily a real fight. I think Gerald's looking to catch units off guard, get a really good slap down, and maybe catch a tank or something like that. But I mean, maybe inadvertently it's going to cause a base trade. Ziggy, about halfway across the map, is still continuing to walk across the map. Okay, now he decides to turn back home. Gerald could try and meet this. Like, you have storms on the high ground. As long as they don't get taken down, there's a very weak warp prism that is ferrying them. There's 2 Vikings looking for the kill. There's 1 good storm. Second storm not nearly as good, but still so many more storms, actually. All 4 High Templars get deposited, even though the warp prism falls away. Does he stand here? Does he recall? Like, he's going to stand here to get the storms in.
I mean, he's actually still getting some pretty sick storms, regardless of whether or not he could have saved any of those units. I think I can definitively say he got the most value he could have. Was it the value that he wanted? Different question entirely. But
yeah,
at the very least, I think that Ziggy probably could just move across the map and kill him had he not gotten those Templar out of the prism, if you know what I mean. Like, maybe he could still go kill him right now, but my point is he definitely would not have been able to defend an attack if he hadn't gotten all those Templar out and burned all their energy, because Ziggy did stand in the storms. He took just look at the army. A lot of these units are very low on health, and you need to take a little bit of time to let your forces get healed before you walk into another blender.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, if those extra 4 High Templars are dead, he's probably across the map already and with healthier units. As it is, Gerald not only has backup storms, right? He's not desperately warping them in right now. He also went into double Immortal production, not just because he doesn't have a robotics bait, but I think that's actually the smart call. There are so many Marauders, and weak Marauders at that a couple of Immortals would actually be one-shotted if they were involved in the fight. I know they're around, but where the heck are they? Okay, now they're coming forward. Maybe it's too late. They're going to need some charge lot buffer to help them as the Archon gets destroyed. Widowman's going to pop both of their shields. I mean, those Immortals would be so much better with the High Templars, but it looks like they're still going to be able to push this back.
Yeah, the siege tank's gonna get picked off by the Immortals. Good pickup there with the prism to keep it alive. Is he doing some weird micro? Oh, he couldn't see it because of the cliff. Right.
Took me a second as well.
Science.
This is it's an interesting game now. I mean, he killed a lot of probes, but Geralt was actually, I think, building during the process, and then also was at a decent count anyways. Definitely needs an observer.
Yes, please.
Is he dragging one? Oh, okay, he's got one for the left.
I'm like, there's got to be one coming from somewhere, right?
And there is. So now he's going to clean all this up. But all right, so Geralt currently has an 8-worker lead, but Ziggy's not really on 4 bases. So whoops!
He did the thing.
Yeah,
he did the thing.
Yeah. But I mean, funnily enough, since he's not pushing that direction, I'm not sure if Ziggy or Geralt's going to be saddest about that. What he's going to be sad about is not realizing that Ziggy is pushing from the left direction. Desperately forces an Archon. At least it'll help out in the future battle, and this should be cleaned up. I love the double warp prism. I'm not sure if that was entirely on purpose, but I'm digging it.
He wants that Roddy prism, and you know what? I don't blame him. Don't blame him. You know, it's like when you're playing the cup shuffle game. You're like, oh, which prism are the 4 High Templar in? One of them is empty. The other one has 4. You know what I mean? There you go. Yeah. You get the guy to suicide all his Vikings trying to snipe the right one, but he gets the empty one. Boom, boom.
I mean, he's not even got any Vikings anymore, so not even really needing to worry about that. And I imagine at one point, one of them is going to be used as harassment. That might have been his plan. It felt like a risky thing to do because he made those back when he was about to defend his 4th, but apparently it's going to pay off. Ziggy only now getting his 4th base up. Geralt's had his 5 for a little while. And just catch this warp prism. That's always nice. Really, I don't think he knows about this army. A couple of storms about to drop right on top of that army.
Ooh, yeah. And he's done a good job with the storms in this game. We have not really seen a lot of good counterplay from Ziggy against those High Templar in this series thus far. He's actually apparently getting some harassment natural. There's something going on over there. He's got obviously this massive attack at the front. He can use a prism to warp in and reinforce. He has the other prism dancing around, shuffling units to keep them alive. So I was gonna say, I actually don't mind a double prism setup at all. There's obvious good usage points for both of them. And then the Zealots are gonna run up front and do their thing. And this is looking pretty good for Geralt. He's happily at 5 bases. He's got the Terran pushed back onto just 3. And we all know that main base mine's out. So you're not really a rich boy anymore here if you're Ziggy. You're You're below 100 supply. He's going to struggle to climb back up over that. And he's going to start floating gas because he can't afford to build medevacs, tanks, or mines. All he can do is build Marines and Marauders, which pretty much only cost minerals.
Now he's at half the supply of his opponents towards the end of that fight there. Now,
Yeah, that's